Welcome back to the Ross Report. So always one of our favorite people to interview because he always has so much to say, and it's all great and it's all content rich, and we're so happy to welcome back to the Ross Report Congressman Clay Higgins. Congressman, welcome back.
Hey, Miss Carol, it's good to talk to you.
Always good to talk to you. I'm going to see you tonight, too, at the ARW meeting, so that's going to be fun. Yeah.
Oh, great. Look forward to it.
Well, I know you're busy, and I want to get to a couple of really critical issues that we're seeing in this election period. Everybody's worried about re-election right now. How is it looking for you? I mean, are you feeling... This is a joke question, okay? It's a trick question. Are you feeling any heat at all from any of your competitors?
No. I mean, they're
I know. I had to ask.
Citizens, and they are constituents, and they have the right to enter the race. That's always been my position now for coming into my fifth election. Mm-hmm. And
it has been. I will confirm that.
They say ugly things about me, and I don't say anything ugly about them. And that's how we roll. And the people cast their vote, and I'll be reelected on the first ballot quite soundly. And having never said an unkind word about the Louisiana citizens that are running against me.
You have not.
They're not my opponents. They're my constituents, Miss Carol.
That's what you say all the time, and I appreciate that. There are some ugly people out there saying some nasty things about you, but that's okay because you just keep rolling. You just keep on rolling the way you roll. Listen, there's a report out.
Every day.
Yeah, I know. There's a report out right now about the Department of Defense having, I'm sure you heard it, having changed a directive 5240-01 on September 27th, expanding the authority of the military to assist in domestic law enforcement activities and exercise the use of lethal force. Have you heard anything about this? I see the directive. It's legit, but it seems crazy.
Yeah, I have insight about that if you'd like to hear it.
Yes, absolutely.
First of all, the executive branch is granted broad authorities to conduct its legitimate affairs, and of course those executive orders are formally put out by official documents, including within the Department of Defense or from the White House, from the President of the United States to the Secretary of Defense and through the Joint Chiefs of Staff and so forth and so on. So, unfortunately, in today's world, these authorities can be used and have been used in a very political manner to drive an agenda, including their agenda to oppress the freedom of speech of conservatives and the freedom to assemble, including online, for conservatives, because this executive branch is all about maintaining power for the establishment and the elites, and they are quite fearful that Donald Trump is going to win soundly in November, and big enough that even their best efforts at cheating, which they will engage in,
already are.
But they are fearful that their best efforts at cheating will be no match for the level of support and victory that Donald Trump will deliver in the November ballot. So the executive branch is using this official communication through the Department of Defense to essentially attempt to frighten and therefore quell the communications of conservatives across the country as we're building towards Election Day, and we're organizing poll watching and we're quite animated about that. You've seen that in our communications on our text thread today. This is happening across the country. Conservatives are saying, we are going to watch this election. We're going to watch these ballots, and we are not going to allow massive coordinated cheating, the likes of which we saw in November of 2020. So here you have with this DOD directive 5240/01, I think, is essentially communicating an interpretation of existing law, and the existing law that governs such a thing is the Posse Comitatus and the Insurrection Act. So these are long-standing laws that, number one, restrict the United States military from participating in law enforcement in the continental United States or in any sovereign state, with the exception of the way the law is laid out in the Insurrection Act, which would allow the military to respond to an actual
a real insurrection.
If we were to suffer that somewhere in the country, if say an army was assembled and they went and took over a city or including Washington D.C., or if we face some actual armed insurrection, then the Insurrection Act allows the United States military to engage at an appropriate level with Americans that would foreseeably be leading that insurrection and participating in that insurrection. An actual insurrection, not just walking around, your own Capitol with your iPhone thing that that the left calls an insurrection. I'm talking about an insurrection as it is historically understood, which is armed men
trying to overthrow
and taking over.
Yeah. But Congressman,
the
problem.
United States military, under federal jurisdiction, cannot engage in law enforcement outside of very strict parameters. Now, the National Guard is under state orders unless they're federalized, and the National Guard can participate in law enforcement actions, and we do that on a regular basis across the country. The National Guard can be called out, like after a big storm, to control looting and things like that. So that's normal, and that's been a part of the fabric of our country, the way the National Guard interacts and supports local and state law enforcement as needed, as called upon by that governor of that sovereign state. So.
Yeah, but in this case, Congressman, the Secretary of Defense can use the lethal force. The decision to use lethal force only needs the Secretary of Defense's approval under this directive. This is dangerous stuff, I think.
Yes, well, it's fascinating. It's 22 pages that I have not read all of. I just printed it up this morning, but essentially, what they're doing is interpreting in a scary way the existing authorities that are granted under long-standing federal law.
Right.
And the Insurrection Act in particular is very, very broadly written. It's written in a way that they used to write laws, understand? And
Yes.
the executive branch it was intended to have broad authorities and the ability to interpret what was needed. So the bottom line now is that you have a weaponized, agenda-driven executive branch that is using the given parameters of their authority to put out orders.
Yeah.
And they're trying to frighten conservative Americans. Really, their effort here is to suppress free speech. They're like they want conservatives talking about this, and they want this out there, this DOD directive, so that conservatives will say, man, they're real serious, man. Maybe I'm not going to go be a poll watcher.
Well, no, I don't think, Congressman, I think that once again they've misjudged conservatives' resolve in this election. We're not going to be screwed over again by them. And I think that it just angers people and makes people madder than ever that they are once again abusing a legitimate power that they had that has not been abused as far as I can see, as they're abusing it. I mean, even Jamie Raskin pretty much, I started out my show and it was believe them when they tell you who they are. And what they're telling us is that they're willing to do anything to maintain power. And Jamie Raskin flat out said, first of all, we'll have Congress, and they're hoping to take over Congress, which I don't think is going to happen. That's the other thing I want to get to you about that. But he thinks they're going to be able to keep Trump out because they're going to interpret the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment properly when the judges did not. But that's a story for another day. Your opinion about, can we maintain the hold on the House? Can we take over the Senate? Do we have a good enough chance of that? And will there be another assassination attempt? All of that. Can you get all that in?
Probably yes, and yes.
Yes.
And I think we're dealing with coordinated assassination. I can't even discuss.
That's what we're afraid of, and it's an inside job too.
We don't want them to know what we know. So when Americans are wondering, what the hell what is guys like Higgins doing to protect the president? And when I say the president, I mean the real president, the one that lives in Mar-a-Lago. We're doing a lot, but we're not talking about it. And we're not doing media about it because we don't want the bad guys to know what we know. And therefore our security measures, obviously are more effective.
Yeah.
Like that. But the bottom line is the former President Trump lives under a constant threat of assassination, and the bad guys behind that are some very well-funded terrorists and criminals, and they're dealing with they have a theater of engagement where they can bring any weaponry they pretty much want to through our open border to the south, and some of this weaponry that they're bringing in is quite advanced at a level like way beyond. Somebody walking up to President Trump with a pistol or something. You're talking about military level stuff. So answering your last question first, there is absolutely an ongoing, continued, and increasingly enhanced level of threat for assassination of Donald Trump, and we're taking that very, very seriously. So,
does Air Force One? Let me ask you this: does Air Force One have some defensive characteristics like some military aircraft does for evading and and deterring any kind of like surface-to-air missiles and that kind of thing?
Yeah, Air Force One does have those capabilities. Yes,
good,
but regular the other planes do not. But we have plenty of capabilities for security measures for air travel that we are using to protect President Trump. And I've been personally involved in pushing that issue and driving response. A lot, and there's a lot of it I just can't discuss. But
I know.
Trust me when I tell you, I've read some of the same stuff that you have and more. and I took very aggressive action a couple of weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago, to push super enhanced security for President Trump.
Well, I know you're tight with Chip Roy, and he mentioned some things like SEAL Team 6 and Delta Force people, and getting them close to the president. And I know you guys are very, very close and think a lot alike. So I'm hoping that's part of what's happening. You don't have to confirm or deny that, but I'm hoping that's what's happening. So the other thing is,
Chip is my friend, and he's a brilliant man. We don't always agree, but we certainly always are aligned intellectually with our discussions about things, and he is driven by his oath to the Constitution. So,
you are,
in some things we are completely aligned, and this is one of them.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Here's my other question. In the meantime,
the Senate and the House, man. For the House races, Mike Johnson, I don't know where his strength has come from, Miss Carol, but that man's been to like 225 cities.
I know, I've heard.
40 states.
He's been out there
this year, and I don't know where he's getting his energy from, but he has set a new mark for very aggressive campaigning and fundraising for districts across the country, House districts that the Democrats are going after, and I believe we're going to keep the majority in the House. The days of big majorities are over.
Yeah, I'm afraid
because
so.
of the entire, Barack Obama, Eric Holder plan that they put in place. They began talking about it 20 years ago, and they gradually had a long-term plan to influence redistricting in all of the sovereign states, and they've been largely successful at that.
Yeah, including here in Louisiana. So that the impact of that, and you can give that responsibility, however you want to look at it, directly to the Obama Eric Holder plan to permanently shift the balance of power in the House of Representatives towards the Democrats. So the days of 25 and 35 seat majorities in the House are probably over. But what about the Senate? Can we get back?
If we have any majority in the House, that's what matters, and we will maintain that majority. I feel very confident about that. In the Senate, I feel cautiously optimistic that we win the Senate by one seat or two seats, and turnout is going to be key. The enthusiasm of the actual Democrat voter is very low, which is why you're seeing this the elitists and the oppressors and the criminals that have embedded themselves in and amongst the Democrat Party
and the Republican Party.
They are anti-American, and those are the guys driving the effort to cheat and to harvest ballots and get those ballots turned in to try and cheat enough to win battleground states.
So,
this is why those guys are increasingly freaking out.
Yeah, they are.
Is because we're winning this thing. If this was a straight up legitimate election, we win hands down across the board.
I mean, think about who's running on the other side. It shouldn't even be close. These people are lunatics. I mean, they are so far out of the mainstream. It's ridiculous, which brings up my next question, because I know you're busy. You got commitments tonight, and I have a few more minutes here that I wanted to talk to you. Who's running the country right now?
Well, that's a damn good
Is that
question.
a trick question?
You know, I'll honestly tell you that I've never. Every day I wake up and I'm thankful to the Lord that I have another day, but it's guaranteed to be another day where I am amazed at the crazy agenda and behaviors of this executive branch across the board. Like, these guys are not in touch with reality. And what has happened is, you ask who's running the country, these little rogue factions from within the Democrat executive have stepped up and filled the vacuum of leadership. So where normally you have a strong president, whether you like him or not, and he has a strong,
administration. They know what they're doing, right? Yeah,
He has a strong administration, has a strong cabinet, and they push their agenda down throughout the bureaucracies. But in this case, there's nobody steering this ship from the White House, because President Biden is not present mentally, and Kamala Harris, she's a straight DEI hire, and was never that lady. Has I'm pretty sure she's mentally unstable as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the White House is not running things in the traditional manner that we've come to expect historically, where they push that leadership and push their agenda and they push their policies. They drive it down into the deepest recesses of the bureaucracies of the executive branch. So with the absence of that strong leadership, again, you can agree or disagree. I'm just saying this is the way things have historically worked.
The buck has to stop somewhere.
The absence of that leadership, these secretaries and undersecretaries, and throughout even in the DOD, you have little rogue factions of leadership that have emerged they're doing the craziest stuff that we look at it and we go, what the hell? What made you think you could get away with doing this?
Congressman, I hate to interrupt you.
Look around and say, well, nobody's telling us otherwise.
Congressman, we're up against a hard break. If you could stay for another segment, fine. But if you have to go, that's okay, too. I just appreciate the time that you've spent with us. And I know you have I
can stay with you through the break. I may have to leave after about 10 minutes into the next break.
It's going to be a long one. But you could stay until, we have a long break with news, etc. You could stay through that?
I can stay through that into the next segment.
All right, good deal.
I'm going to have to break off during the next segment.
All right, because I want to ask you about Middle East, sending troops to the Middle East, etc. We'll be right back on the Ross Report. All right, welcome back to the Ross Report. A very patient congressman. Sorry about that long spot break, Congressman, but we didn't want to interrupt you as you were talking before that. But I do have some questions, two in particular that had what? What are you laughing about?
I'm laughing because you said you didn't want to interrupt me when I was talking. Man, you get me on the radio, you can't stop me from talking.
I know. That's why every once in a while I feel disrespectful, but
can't get a question in on your own damn show.
I know. There you go. Hey, what's a talk show host to do? When I can get you on the air, I'm just delighted. You're a great guy. The Inspector General. The first quick question. Inspector General Michael Horowitz has been stonewalling Congress as to just how many FBI assets were in the crowd on J6. anytime soon we're going to get that, right? Are we going to get that after the election, maybe?
Well, I mean, we already have what we believe are accurate numbers. I had stated last year was over 200, and people rolled their eyes about that, especially in the mainstream media. And now it turns out I was right.
Well, I know
right
that
all along. I had a very effective formula for putting together that calculation based upon evidence that I observed with my own eyes. And what's happening now is these guys are trying to run out the clock on us, Ms. Carroll, and they have effectively basically done that.
Yeah.
Like they have run out the clock. The 118th Congress is essentially, it's over. When we return to D.C., it'll be after the election cycle. So it was so much hanging, the future of our country hanging on this election cycle. They were trying to run out the clock because they knew that if they confirmed what mostly, I mean, I kind of led the reveal on this going way back.
Oh yeah, you were the first one. You were talking
22.
Yeah, talking about the buses and all that.
For Ray.
Yep.
And then over the course of 2023, I came up with accurate determinations of what the numbers look like, and we revealed that last year. So the bottom line is that the FBI and the DOJ, they're deeply corrupt at the highest levels. Those guys knew that if they did reveal and confirm that the FBI had over 200 human assets working the crowd and driving the worst behaviors where we saw on January 6th. If they confirm that, yeah, they did have two buses of FBI assets show up that we know of, that we tracked, because those buses were abandoned.
There are videos coming out
confirming things like that officially.
Yeah.
Then they knew that would further support President Trump's reelection, and that's what they're so desperately opposed to Donald Trump being inaugurated again as the 47th president, because they know they're out. So they have essentially run out the clock on us.
So, Congressman,
and
let me ask you
not
this.
much you can do about that.
Let me ask you this. The last time when Trump was elected, he could have very easily gone after Hillary Clinton for the laws that she broke, along with Christopher Comey and all of those other bad actors. He didn't. He didn't, for the interest of moving on and not causing more disruption. This time, there is ample evidence of the Biden crime family and what they've been up to. Will he back off again, or will Congress be able to pursue? Because, I mean, we have 2 books, we have multiple documents, we have emails, we have everything we need. We have bank suspicious activity reports, bank statements. Is anybody going to pay for the crimes that they've done? And we have evidence. There is evidence that policies that they put forth damaged this country by selling us out to the Chinese. Is anybody going to pay for any of that?
Yeah, it's a legitimate question, and it's one that echoes through the conversations of conservatives across the country. And let me just say that the biggest threats to our republic, as they have been made manifest in the form of human beings in positions of leadership in this executive branch, Joe Biden is not even at the top of that list. When you're dealing with like Garland and Ray and Austin and Mayorkas, like these are the guys that we should, and their chain of command and that cabal of leadership at the highest levels of corruption within those departments those are the people that should go to jail. And we've got corruption within the Pentagon. These guys that America don't know, but we know who they are.
Yeah.
We have deep corruption in the DOJ and the FBI, the CIA. Our intel community is totally compromised at its highest levels. We have to clean house.
So the question is, who are you going to recommend?
Donald Trump is inaugurated, then we will. There's a couple of hundred of these guys that know that their careers are over, and many of them will face investigations and potentially criminal charges. But Biden is not at the top of that list.
Well, we know he's a puppet, but I mean, the thing is, you got all these in the military, et cetera. They're all coming in. The Republicans that are coming out against Trump, and you're wondering in what universe are they living that they could support a Kamala Harris? She's a total lunatic and has no credentials whatsoever. So my question is, if you have any insight, who's going to be the Attorney General? Because that's going to be a critical position in this new administration if Trump gets elected.
I don't know, but I can tell you that that President Trump has a short list of names for each of those key positions, including the Attorney General and the Director of the FBI and the Secretary of Homeland Security, et cetera. Every one of those names will cause you to stand up and cheer.
Well, I hope so. I'm ready to stand up and cheer, Congressman.
President Trump had 4 years in the White House to kind of figure out the way politics works at that level. And over the course of those 4 years and the subsequent 4 years that followed. So for the past 8 years, the president has come to clearly understand who the real dedicated, conservative, constitutionalist Republicans are. So these guys that were able to like fake us out 8 years ago, they can't do that anymore. So the cabinet that President Trump puts together is going to be epic, and the names of the men and women that he brings in as his secretaries for his cabinet, you're going to be so happy with, because you'll see that we're taking our country back. This is not a game. Because we're losing our country.
Yep, we are.
And we are damn close to a point of no return, where states start having legitimate discussions about secession, and where Americans across the country start saying, well, I guess we have to build our own community here and establish like our own deal out here. Yes. So, because the federal government has either totally failed us or even weaponized itself against us.
Well, that's the problem with that DOD directive that I have. And the other thing is, I mean, when Biden, believe them when they tell you who they are. He says, you have AR-15s, we have F-16s. I mean, when your president is threatening you like that, and then you have Jamie Raskin pretty much say, well, we can disqualify Trump even if he wins in November, because, the third section of the 14th Amendment, these people they have no idea. They have no respect for the law, for the Constitution, for anything. They're horrible.
Let me say about when Biden said that about F-15s. F-15s don't fly without mechanics, and they don't fly without parts.
Yeah.
And they don't fly without pilots, and they don't fly without navigators, and they don't fly without the patriot men and women of our United States military, who will not support, if it comes down to it. I mean, the audacity of the man to suggest,
I have
what, I have a Second Amendment right to have to have, legally owned firearms below the caliber of 50, up to the caliber of 50, and he says, "Oh yeah, well I've got F-15s." Well, I'll be damned. What the hell are you suggesting?
Isn't that awful? That's really pretty horrifying.
You're gonna attack Americans with F-15s?
Well, Congressman, the FBI sent out a heck of a lot of people attacking Americans for praying at abortion clinics.
Yeah.
I
mean that's certainly the weaponization of the federal government against us. We're gonna win in November, Miss Carroll. We're gonna maintain the majority in the House of Representatives, the People's House. Speaker Johnson is doing heroic work across the country to assure that we maintain that majority. I believe that the Senate races on the Republican side will benefit from the enthusiasm of Republican voters that are turning out for Donald Trump.
Yep.
And we'll win the Senate by 1 or 2 seats. That's fine. It doesn't matter what the number is. As long as we have the majority, then we control the floor and we control the committees.
And the Mitch won't be back.
Donald Trump will win soundly in November, despite the fact that there will be efforts at coordinated ballot harvesting and cheating.
Of course, that's the way they win.
And we're in that war. We're battling for the preservation of our republic. And Americans like you, good lady, and servants of we the people like me.
And you, good sir.
We are just not going to sit idly by and let our country slide away into oblivion.
We will never
for this thing.
Never.
And we intend to win.
Never. In the words of one of my heroes, Winston Churchill, we will never, ever give up. Thank you, Congressman. We have worn out our welcome. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time. We appreciate you so much. Thanks. And I'll see you tonight.
Yes, ma'am.
Going to be fun.
Yes, ma'am. God bless.
God bless.
Be
You
reassured, America. We shall prevail.
All right. Thank you, Congressman. Your lips to God's ears.
Ma'am.
Thank you.